So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and to what I must be honest is one of my favourite custom scenarios for quite a long time, at least to play in anyway, because I was actually a part of this one. For once I actually had the time to actually join one of these larger scenario games. So I'm also very pleased to be showing this one off, because this is one that's made by Froggy. It's called Mountain Mayhem, but I'm not actually sure what I'm going to call the video itself. Of course, if you don't care about my rambling, the links to the battle starting are in the description below, as well as all of the other things, including the 2017 Mod of the Year vote, and the developers would really appreciate your vote, I'm sure of that. But yes, back to the scenario. This is kind of a sort of siege battle. As you can see, there is a very minor settlement here, but it is more of a, it is an attack defense sort of scenario. Most of them will work like this, but it is a 4v4, and the orcs and the evil men are on the defense, and the dwarves and their allies from the Rovanian in Dale are going to be laying siege to this snowy mountaintop settlement, which presumably the orcs have taken at some point in the past from the men of Dale. So, without further ado, I think we will actually talk about the rules of the scenario first, because this is one that actually, the rules are worth going over, because it will help you understand what is actually going to be going on in the battle itself, because it's not exactly as simple as the attackers just attacking the settlement and all four defenders are going to be trying to hold them off. The attackers will be converging on this mountaintop, so what they will be doing is rather simple, but how we're going to be doing it as the defenders is what sets this one apart from most other sort of scenarios like this that I've played more recently and that I've seen more recently. So of course I'm on the defender's side, but for the start we'll look at Goddess Nimhain, or Outfit as he's called on the Discord. Both of the Discord links will be in the description below. I'm having trouble getting my words out this evening, it would appear. But yes, as you can see, his army is going to be the one that is holding this central position, and he's going to be sort of accosted on all sides by two Dalian and two Dwarven armies, with the exception of the north. That area is going to be clear of enemy forces. But yes, this is the town centre, and his army is very elite as well. We'll go into the compositions shortly, but his army is the most elite of the defenders, and he's going to have to hold them off for quite a while. I do have a limited presence in this town centre. I do have my general and a couple of other units helping him, but for the most part it is just him on his own. Then we'll move on to this army over here, which is Froggy. He's playing as one of the Misty Mountains armies, and he will be the initial reinforcements. So this sort of northern entrance into the settlement is going to be where the reinforcements for the defenders are going to be coming from. So they're going to be going in here, and he will be able to reinforce Goddess Nimhain's army, and this will sort of relieve the pressure, because if Dale and the dwarves really move quickly, they could crush our defences before the battle even really gets going. So Froggy will be reinforcing him, and then even further away we can see that going, well, to the far left hand side of the map we have Fitz's army, and he's, again, the concept is the same, because as you can see he'll have to go all the way up and around here, slowly marching his forces so they don't get exhausted, and then go in through the same entrance that Froggy does to reinforce Goddess Nimhain's position, and presumably Froggy at this point. And they will need that reinforcements as the battle goes on, because of course the Dwarven ability to really put a defence under pressure is quite extreme with how much mass they have. And then we come to my army. Now my army, bits of it are in this, well, this area. My sort of elite core is going to be helping Goddess Nimhain right from the start. But I also have sort of 3 expeditionary forces of hidden units which are designed to ambush and surprise the enemy. And most of these are consisting of stuff like Snaga Skirmishes, Snaga Archers, Underground Goblins, Goblin Infantry. The only unit I have in melee that is really very, very good that I can use in an ambush in this situation are the Mountain Orc Berserkers, and they're not even very good. You know, they're the only ones with any sort of melee expertise, shall we say. And yeah, I have sort of 3 patches of them, and my job is to slow down the enemies to allow our reinforcements to get to the settlement itself and do as much damage as I can before we can then sort of really hold the mountaintop village. So I'll go through the army compositions now, and I'll go through them slightly more quickly because I have talked about the scenario a little bit, so I will try and sort of make this a little bit more quick. So Goddess Nimhain's army is more elite, but of course Gundabad's army is always going to have goblin trackers in it. We've got some Witch Realm pikemen over here, we've got some Guardians of Khan Doom, and also some snow trolls, but most of his army is very elite. We've also got the very scary witches, they can get some nice volleys off, the Guardians of Khan Doom, the catapult of course is going to be very important, the Witch Realm Inquisitors. We've also got some Witch Realm pikemen and goblin trackers. You can pretty much see the thing here. The Goddess Nimhain's army is a very elite Gundabad force. My army is consisting, well, I've got some Orc bodyguards and 2 units of Blackback Mountain Berserkers, but apart from that, it's completely made up of Snaga, lower tier goblins, and Mountain Orc Berserkers. I've also got a force over here which is going to be sort of working as chaff. They're the most initial reinforcements, but again, they're just going to be sort of trash to help hold the line. And then we'll move on to Froggy's army, quickly going through his. He's got a more elite Misty Mountains army than I have, at least for holding the line. So he's got a couple of units of crossbows, 3 units of crossbows in fact. He's got some Blackback Berserkers, and then he's got some heavy Goblin Spears, which are going to be much better at holding the line than my units are. He's got some Orc Bodyguard, a couple of units of Blackwatch Legion, which is going to be excellent at trying to sort of equalise against the Dwarves. He's also got some chaff as well with his Goblins, but he's also got some Mountaineer Blades and some genuine frontline troops, which my army kind of lacks, including the Pikes. And then finally we have over here Fitz's army, and again he's got a pretty elite Gundabad army. It's not quite as strong as Goddess Nimhain. He's got a full complement of Orc Halberdiers. He's also got some Warg Skirmishers and some Goblin Trackers and some Witch Realm Hammer Guard, but for the most part he's got a pretty decent elite core, but he's also got some Halberdiers and such at the front over here. Of course, also quickly go through the attackers, who really need to get their running going, because they will need to get into the settlement before we reinforce it fully. We have Orange Firedon playing as Dale. He's got some Dalian Paladins, some Dismounted Elves, pretty large complement of Dalian Spearmen, which will be pretty good against both Gundabad and the Misty Mountains, some Royal Guard, which could be very dangerous, more Dalian Paladins, and then at the front he's got a large complement of Lake Town. He's got 1 unit of Hearth Watchmen, and then the Dalian Skirmish line, which is of course very, very potent, and the Dale Dragon Slayers, and you can see that he actually is in range with these Dragon Slayers to start hitting Fitz's army immediately, just to get a little bit of chip damage done before they ever make it to the battlefield proper. We also have Alisan the Strategist playing as one of the Dwarven armies, Axemen of Erebor of course, and we've got some Ironfoot Warriors, Erebor Infantry, and the Dwarven armies are pretty darn elite. We've got a nice complement of Ironfoot units, but also some very nice elite units mixed in there, so not the Ironfoot Warriors. But we've got more Ironfoot Warriors, we've got the Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin, and also some Ironfoot Pikes, which are going to be very difficult for us to deal with because the Ironfoot Pikes are so brutally effective. And then back here, more Erebor Infantry, more Ironfoot Warriors, and the mighty Mithril Guard. So that's going to be one problem that we really will have to deal with. The Dwarven Infantry is going to be so much better than our own. And over here we have Bobo 16k. He's also playing as the Dwarves. Very similar fare over here. Erebor Infantry, a lot of armor piercing, which we're going to have to deal with. More Dragon Slayers, some Khazad Warriors as well. The Khazad Warriors in their natural home here in a snowy mountain peak. And we also have some Ironfoot Pikes, some Ironfoot Warriors. And over here we've got some Hammers of Gundabad mixed in with some Sons of the Fallen and a Catapult. And then finally, down here, we have Master Blaster playing as Dale. He's got a couple of units of Earls actually, so we're going to need to be careful out in the open field. My ambushes could really be shut down hard by them all on their own. He's also got some Avari Pikemen. He's got a fair amount of Dalesmen as well. I think this is to equalise with my army, because my army can't be expected to kill so many elite troops. So the Dalesmen and the Lake Town Infantry, my Goblins will at least be able to do some damage to, as opposed to some of these more elite units like the Spearmen are going to be very tough for my Goblins to take on, particularly back here, Paladins, Earls. You know, my Goblins don't stand much of a chance against them at all. So, without further ado, let us begin. And of course, one of the things that the attackers do have to bear in mind is that Alisan the Strategist is kind of isolated, because if he moves up here, the cliff does separate him and Bobo's Dwarven armies. Firedon is also completely cut off from his allies. He's on his own sort of little ridgeline over there. But Bobo and Master Blaster's armies are both going to be attacking this side of the settlement, so they're both going to be able to meet up. And this is also where the action will start most quickly, of course, because Dale do have some cavalry of their own, so they're going to be able to really close the distance to the settlement more quickly than their allies. And of course, my ambushes are still just hiding. And again, what you did notice, I did have an ambush down here in this trench, and my plan with these guys down here was to wait until either Alisan the Strategist or Bobo 16k moved in a little more, and then I would come up behind them with a force of Goblins to try and really stretch their army a little bit more thin, so they couldn't use their mass to push through, because that is something that the Dwarves are so good at. And outside of the Blackwatch Legion, we honestly don't have much of an answer to that, and we only have 2 units of them. And, you know, Froggy's army is more than likely going to make it to the settlement more quickly than the others. And also, if the attackers do choose to, you can see the Witch Realm Inquisitors sort of making their way out. The attackers can also go up and around this way, and they can assault the northern gate if they want, or they, you know, Master Blaster's army could be used to try and block either Froggy if he's quick enough, or particularly Fitz's army from getting into the main settlement to allow his allies some time. So there is a lot of ways in which this map can play out, and it's one of the main reasons why I liked it. Of course, I do think that I had the most fun army as well, because while my army in terms of quality was most certainly the worst army on the field, it was also really fun to play all of these hidden units around the outside of the settlement and be sort of a sacrificial lamb for my allies. You can also see over here that the Mountain Orc Berserkers, I did notice as well that the Dwarves were going to take their time getting up here. Meanwhile, we can see that the Dalian Earls have already made it up the hill. the Witch Realm Inquisitors sort of lining up, but it does look like the Dalian Earls are going to be able to get this charge off on them. The charge is also pretty important. The Earls don't have the biggest charge bonus, to be fair, because they are melee cavalry, but getting that charge is still going to be very important. The Witch Realm Inquisitors will win in sustained melee, however. And seeing that Dale was sort of really taking the initiative here and sort of really charging up the hill very quickly, I decided to help. You know, these Witch Realm Inquisitors could do a lot of damage, particularly with the help of my units, so I was going to keep these Mountain Orc Berserkers close to the Inquisitors, because like most Axemen, they do have a bonus versus Cav in sustained melee. Now, unfortunately for me, I was also bringing up my Snaga Skirmishes behind the line, and you can see that these Earls noticed them very, very quickly. So despite the fact that I'm going to get some decent volleys off into these guys, the Snaga Skirmishes, as far as javelins go, are at the lower end of the spectrum. So while they will still do some decent damage, you can see some Earls did fall, the Earls are still going to do a great deal of damage. You can see that volley actually connected quite well. I'm actually surprised that the Earls didn't continue charging in, but then you can see that I'm quickly bringing up the Underground Goblins, hoping to bog these guys down in a sustained fight. And he can't really afford to lose his Earls, because his Earls are the only really effective screening force he has against these Witch Realm Inquisitors. And the Witch Realm Inquisitors could be a real pain in the neck for his army. You can also see that they're really trying to sort of chase down those Earls, but the Dalian arrows are already flying, trying to target the Witch Realm Inquisitors, which is probably not the best use of their time, honestly. The Witch Realm Inquisitors are a very, very tough unit to take down. Outside of Dragon Slayers, you're not really going to see a great deal of returns, and the Royal Guard with their AP arrows. You can see that these Earls, they're not going to win in sustained combat with Witch Realm Inquisitors. Witch Realm Inquisitors are by far the best unit individually. But there are two Earls. If you can sandwich them, it will be good for them. You can see I'm also trying to keep these Mountain Orc Berserkers close, and I'm just going to try and sort of block the main Dalian advance with both my units of Underground Goblins and my Goblin Infantry. Meanwhile, if we look on the other side, you can actually see the charge of these Mountain Orc Berserkers down the hill again. They're really the only stopping power I have in melee at the moment. You can see that these Hearth Watchmen are leading the line, and I was hoping actually to crush these guys very quickly, because again, I don't really stand much of a chance against Dale in a skirmish fight, so I really need to get into the battle and do some damage very quickly. You can see that the arrows are already flying, but the Mountain Orc Berserkers in melee are obviously going to squash these Hearth Watchmen, and I also have these Goblin Infantrymen coming in behind to add a little bit more survivability. Again, not much, but I've also got my Snaga Archers hiding, and they're going to be ready to pounce. If we head back over to here, we can see that the fire arrows from my own Snaga Archers are flying. I was trying to go after the Avari Elder Pikemen. These Underground Goblins are sort of trying to hold back the entire Dalian advance, which I'm sending in another unit of Goblin Infantry as well. Against these lower tier units like the Dalesmen and the Lake Town Infantry, they will actually, you know, they'll last a fairly long time, considering that they are a free unit in the current patch. You can see that the frame rate is dying in the face of all of these units and arrows flying. My Mountain Orc Berserkers are sticking very close to these Witch Realm Inquisitors again. I do like how Goddess Niemheim was aggressive with the Witch Realm Inquisitors, despite the fact that it is his general's unit, because it's going to be completely useless in the settlement. Like he said in the voice chat at the time, he wanted to really cause some damage with these guys, and I don't blame him, particularly on this army, with Master Blaster's army, because there's a lot of these lower tier units which aren't going to do a great deal of damage to the Witch Realm Inquisitors in melee. My Snaga Skirmishes are being focused down now by the Dalian Archer force. Still trying to keep these Mountain Orc Berserkers a little bit close by. Going to get a nice rear charge into these Dalesmen as well. And the Mountain Orc Berserkers are a much more fearsome shock unit than the Dalesmen. I do like the look of the Dalesmen, because they do look like a bunch of just woodland explorers. But an elite infantry unit they are not. You can see that the frame rate is dying in the face of all these men, but you can see that I have a very thin line of goblins that are holding back the tide of the Dalian advance, and this has led to Froggy's forces and Fitz's wargs, who have charged forward very quickly, to manage to get forward. And the warg skirmishers will be a very effective screening force against the dwarves in particular, so he will be able to slow down Bobo from the other side, and Froggy will be able to reinforce our lines up here, so my sacrifice will have been worth it. You can see I've got a decent amount of kills on those Avari Elder Pikemen. I've cut them down from 130 to 90, and that's from Snaga Archer fire, I must stress, so they've certainly, well, paid for themselves. This is a scenario, so of course I didn't have to pay for my army at all. You can see that my Underground Goblins have sprung their trap. My front line over here is collapsing pretty quickly because the Dale Swordmasters have come forward, and the Dale Swordmasters are too much for my Goblins to handle, I fear. You can see that, oh, that is a general gone, and that is actually Master Blaster's general, so one version of King Brand is dead after being charged by the Witch Realm Inquisitors. You can see over here that the Underground Goblins' defeat seems certain, but they are holding back the tide. And my Snaga Archers throughout the battle were actually not trading too terribly with the Dalian Marksmen. It's probably because they weren't being targeted, but even so, I was very impressed with them. And Froggy has also sent forward his chaff over here, so we're just content to sort of hold our orange fired on back and concentrate on the other fronts for now. Speaking of which, we have a look over here. Master Blaster's army has been somewhat scattered, so he's been a bit bamboozled by the goblins. And you can see over here that the Snaga archers, I think they're out of ammunition now, so I'm just sending them into melee to hold back the main Dalian infantry force. He did send forward a unit of paladins, which of course did cause my goblins to fold like wet tissue paper. But now, how will the paladins deal with Snaga archers, I wonder? Of course, the answer is clear, but I'm still just doing my job in holding back the numbers so that Fitz's army can really help get into the settlement and we can really fortify ourselves for the storm to come. So I'm throwing these javelins into these Avari Elder pikemen, which really can't catch a break. I'm really trying to sort of whittle them down because it will really help us in the line battles, cutting down some of those pikemen, because the dwarves have got a lot of pikemen as well. You can see that back down here, you can see that what's left of the Witch Realm Inquisitors is still going. They have been targeted now by the Dale Dragon Slayers, and they are in sustained melee with the Dalian Paladins though. So this is going to be bad for Outfit, because he is almost certainly going to lose his general here. There's also a lot of Dalesmen over here, but he has done a lot of damage to Master Blaster's army with this single cavalry unit. Most of the death that was caused over here was from this single unit of cavalry. My infantry was just here to sort of pin them in place. All these Rivermen. Will they get a volley off? They do. And Azog Mark 1, we will call him, has fallen. So this does mean that this outer defence over here is going to fall by the wayside pretty quickly. If we look over here, that the Snaga are still trying to fight the Dalian Paladins bravely. Bobo has also got to deal with essentially being kited to death by these Warg Skirmishes, so several of these units are going to take a lot of damage. The Dalian Marksmen are targeting these guys from the other side, which of course Wargs are not particularly great under arrow fire. They do have HP in the current patch, but even so, these pikemen are also getting into melee with some of them, but Bobo is taking some nice attritional casualties, which we will need, because fighting the dwarves in melee in a grindy sort of battle is something that we're not going to be able to win. So these javelins really cutting down these pikes. I'm not sure what he's going for. I think he's going for the Ironfoot Warriors, which is again a very nice choice because, you know, that takes away their AP advantage. And the Blackwatch Legion we have is going to be able to bulldoze the pikes should it come to that. Bobo, however, trying to sort of fire into the settlement with his catapult. So he's going for some of these Rudal Berserkers, it would seem, which is a good choice. They're in a nice long line, so you might get a lot of them in one go. You can also see these Goblin Trackers are immediately firing down upon some of these units. Bobo can of course split up his forces and go up here. He's got these Khazad Orc Hunters, which are trading fire with the Goblin Trackers. But primarily I think the Khazad Orc Hunters are going for the Witch Realm Pikemen, so again, we really need these Pikemen to stay alive if we're going to hold the lines efficiently. Meanwhile, if we look down here, we can see that Alasan, the strategist, is also making his attack onto the southern entrance to this snowy mountain peak. He's leading the way with some Ironfoot Warriors. He's also got some Ironfoot crossbows, sort of blocking the way with these Goblin Trackers. I think that a skirmish fight is what's going to be going on over here for quite some time, because both Goddess Nimhain and Alasan, the strategist, don't really want to get into an attrition-y based fight, particularly the dwarves, because they are isolated over here and they really don't want to be tasting the wrath of those witches. Someone will taste the wrath of the witches at some point, but if it's one of the sort of isolated armies, Alasans or Orange Firedons, they could really find themselves in trouble very, very quickly, whereas Master Blaster and Bobo are on hand to really reinforce one another quite quickly. You can also see over here that Goddess Nimhain's catapult is also firing back. I assume he's actually going for some counter-fire on Bobo's catapult. In fact, I think one of them has already crumbled, actually. Yes, indeed, one of them has. So a bit of anti-artillery action going on here. You can also see that these Warg Skirmishes from Fitz still throwing their jabbies at someone. I can't see because they're sporadically firing, but they're still just running interference on the advance. You can also see that Bobo's dwarves are moving up the hill now. There are also these guys, some Warg Skirmishers, and also more Warg Skirmishers. I think there were also some Bolg's champions in Froggy's army, if I'm not mistaken. Those are just Warg Skirmishers, though. Maybe the Bolg's champions are already dead. It's possible. You can actually see down here, I still have my Goblin Infantry down here that have been committed for a long, long time. And this unit of Goblin Infantry, they have finally routed and broken, but they held in the face of an entire Dalian army for a long, long time. Very impressed with my Goblins. Good for them. You can also see that over here, Orange Firedon is sort of slowly inching his way up the hill, which is to be expected. He doesn't want to send forward his elites because they will take some attritional casualties. But we're also just sort of trying to slow him down. So my Snaga Archers are still firing. They've done some decent damage. I'm using fire arrows just because it looks nice, to be honest with you. And also with Snaga archers, who cares, really? I've also had this unit of Snaga skirmishers on standby, so I do have some jabbies. And over here, Froggy has also sent over some reinforcements to me. You can see there's a nice road up here from the north where the orcs are bringing their reinforcements from. He's got a couple of units of Blackback Mountain Berserkers, so really we are just content to keep this guy at arm's length for now. The second Dalian army, we shall call it. Meanwhile, Alasan, the strategist, the almighty skirmish is still going on, but several units of Goddess Nimheim's sort of trashy units are being sent forward to block the advance of some of these Ironfoot warriors. Because of course the armor-piercing potential of the Dwarven infantry in melee is huge, so we do need to try and sort of keep them at arm's length for as long as possible. Of course we do have our own armor-piercing answers, the Rudar Berserkers in particular, and the Blackback Mountain Berserkers. Not the most armoured units, and they are AP themselves. Well, we can see over here that Bobo's army is still taking a lot of skirmish fire. There's a lot of fire arrows flying into those Ironfoot pikemen. And you can also see that, again, Outfit is sort of using all of his goblin trackers that are out of ammunition to just try and keep the dwarven advances from reaching our lines too quickly, which is not a terrible idea. Meanwhile, over here you can see that Master Blaster is sort of pouring up the hill after dispatching my ambush forces. You can see that Bobo is also sending forward some dwarves to help him out. So let's have a look over here, shall we? Froggy's forces of Heavy Goblin Spearman. He's also got some... no, it's just entirely Heavy Goblin Spears, I think, with crossbows. So the Heavy Goblin Spears are AP in melee. Of course, they don't have the highest attack value, so it doesn't really matter too much. But they are a much better holding unit than my goblins were. And when they're backed up by crossbows, the casualties that these dwarves could take, in particular, is pretty extreme. And these pikes are not really in the ideal formation, but Dale are going to be trying to sort of go around and sort of head up this pathway over here, which is a very narrow one. And Froggy already has Heavy Goblin Spearmen blocking the way, and crossbows up on this ridge line, showering down on their advance. The crossbow should absolutely be going for some of the heavily armoured units like the Dalian Paladins, if they possibly can, of course. But Master Blaster did take quite a lot of losses during his advance up the hill, but a lot of his army is also made up of the lower tier of the attacking armies. So if an army is going to take a lot of damage, it would have been his. Man, this frame rate though. You can see that a lot of these crossbow bolts, he needs to be careful because a lot of these crossbow bolts could start hitting the floor pretty quickly. Meanwhile, if we look down here, you can see that Orange Fired On is really starting to break through. There's a lot of dead Snaga on the floor. And actually, Froggy did send forward a single unit of Blackback Mountain Berserkers. I would have been in favour of him sending both of them up, to be honest with you, at this point in the battle. But we're also getting some reinforcements from Fitz in the shape of some Orc Halberdiers. And Orc Halberdiers and Blackback Berserkers are going to be an easy victory for them over the Elves if they can both get there. But really, of course, the fly in the ointment is the very powerful Dalian skirmish line, the Dalian marksmen with the Dragon Slayers at their centre, but the Dragon Slayers are being saved for late on. And of course the Royal Guard. Orange Fired On definitely had the strongest attacking army in terms of skirmish potential. He's also got some Rivermen in there somewhere, but I was actually focusing down one of his units of Rivermen with my Snaga Archers and did a lot of damage. Meanwhile, if we go back into the settlement itself, let's go back to the southern entrance to the village. You can actually see that the melee is in full swing over here. You can tell because the frame rate has gone to hell almost immediately. But yes, we have some Guardians of Khan Doom, Rudal Berserkers and Goblin Trackers along with some Witch Realm Pikemen. So this is a real rumble here in this sort of valley between the elites of Gundabad and the elites of the Dwarves. We've also got some Snow Trolls coming in. I'm not sure I would have used the Snow Trolls for this purpose. Mainly because they tend to die pretty quickly in a very grindy sort of frontline fight. I would have tried to sort of push them around should the opportunity present itself and get into the skirmishes, but even so, we are at least, you can see the mass of Gundabad with these trolls in the mix. We're starting to push even the dwarves back. And also, if we look down here, we can see that I'm sort of menacingly chasing Alasan up the hill with my mighty underground goblins. And his Dwarven Nobleman, which is his general, and his Ironfoot Warriors, they have actually turned around at this point. And they are going to be moving to engage. And this is one thing that I did actually want. I wanted some of his elites, including these Mithril Guard and the Dwarven Noblemen, to not advance forward. Because if his army bunches up and really starts to push through our lines, we're going to be in trouble. Because we can't afford to send too many of our defenders over there. So just splitting up his army is going to be what I'm going to try and do. So I'm just going to sort of get my Snaga Archers to just sort of fire into the Dwarven Noblemen. Cause a bit of damage to them. That was the first volley was fire arrows, but all the rest of the volleys I'm going to try and get my money's worth out of them more efficiently. That frame rate there. You can also see these underground goblins, they're not really going to be a match, and also because of the inaccuracy of the Snaga archers, there's also a good amount of friendly fire going on over here. So we can also see these goblin infantrymen pushing up over here. Meanwhile, let's have a look over here, shall we? Actually see all the witchers menacingly coming forward. What is going on here? Are the witchers going to fire? There's also these Khazad Orc Hunters, which I think are out of ammunition, so they've pulled out their hand axes. A mixture of goblin trackers and witch-round pikemen are holding position. The catapult doesn't have the best shot because of the buildings, which is a bit of a shame. But of course, Bobo's catapult was entirely destroyed, so that's good. All the witches are firing, and they're going to be going into these Ironfoot pikemen, it would seem. Ooh. Burning death. That is brutal. That unit of Khazad warriors just got grilled. So a single strafing shot, and you know that's going to render that unit of Khazad warriors a lot worse, well, very worse for wear. Meanwhile, if we go back over to Master Blaster's front, primarily anyway, Bobo is still over here, and he's actually pushing back against Froggy's army. Master Blaster actually did manage to smash through the lines, and so Froggy's position has essentially been overwhelmed. You can see that these Dalian Paladins, you know, the Mountain Uruk Blades are a decent unit, but you know, the Mountain Uruk Pike's not really facing the right way. And the Dalian Paladins are a really brutal unit to use against the Orcs, simply because the Orcs, all of their survivability comes from their armour values, and the Dalian Paladins just crush armoured units most of the time, unless they are, of course, an even higher tier shock infantry than they are. You can see that it is a bit late, because a lot of Fitz's army is already coming over here, and we can now retreat back across this little gully and wait for them to try and attack the northern entrance, if we so desire. Yeah, things are going pretty well for us so far. If we go back down here to where my little ambush is going, I've got these Snaga skirmishers sort of firing in. And I'm firing with my Snaga skirmishers into the Ironfoot warriors, because the Snaga skirmishers' damage values, they're not going to be enough to deal huge amounts of damage to the Mithril guards, to be honest with you, unless I've got something genuinely pressuring them in melee as well. So what I was going to do is I was going to just sort of kite around with my Snaga skirmishers and try and get as many kills on these Ironfoot warriors as possible, and deny Alasan some of his numbers when he's attacking this southern entrance to the settlement. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to continue to kite around with these Snaga, because the Snaga are a lot faster than the dwarves. I really hate it when people kite me, but it's the kind of army that I was given, so I didn't really have too much of a choice in the matter. So I do apologise to Alasan. I've not actually played with him before, but you know, he wasn't angry about it, so he's a good sport. But yeah, I'm just going to kite these Snaga skirmishers around, just try and avoid his dwarves, which is going to be easy enough. These Snaga archers are out of ammunition actually by now, so I'm actually just going to sort of leave them here. And I'm going to be able to sort of attack the rear of his assault with my Snaga units when they're out of ammunition. They won't do a lot of damage, of course, but they will at least make his position a little less comfortable than it currently is. And you can see that there's a lot of heavy-duty dwarves over here, a lot of Erebor infantry. There's also the Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin in here somewhere. You can see that the very solid front line of Goddess Nimhein's army is here. So we're going to be able to deal a lot of damage over here. I'm also bringing over another unit of Snaga skirmishers to help him out. We've also got another unit of Guardians of Kharndoom, of course. Goddess Nimhein's army is the most elite of all of them. I've got some underground goblins in here just sort of trying to help hold the line. But it is very much a stalemate over here at the moment. We're not really trading too efficiently with the dwarves, but they aren't trading too efficiently with us either. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You can also see down here that the Khazad Orc Hunters still firing, so there's still a lot of skirmishing going on in the battle. We can actually see over here that the battle has been met. Khazad Orc Hunters in melee, but they're just getting completely ripped apart by Rudar Berserkers and Witch Realm Pikemen. But really over here is where the attackers, initially things were looking pretty bad for them up here after the ambush, but now things are actually looking very good for them. Master Blaster and Bobo managing to combine their forces to eliminate the first portion of Froggy's reinforcing army with minimal casualties as well. So things are looking pretty good there, and you can see that we're behind in terms of the percentages of kills, but we have been ahead during the period of the battle, and it will fluctuate a little more between now and the end of the fight as well. If you have a look over here, there was victory for this front line. We can see that still no pressure on us from the north, really. You can see that there are some Dalesmen taking some skirmish fire. Froggy just sort of marshalling the position over here, but it does look like Master Blaster is going to sort of switch his position and help out Bobo. You can see that actually these Khazad warriors managed to slip through the net somewhat, but they are now just going to get completely torn apart by Orc bodyguards and Guardians of Kharndoom. So it's no real great loss that we let these guys in behind our lines. If it was more than one unit, then we would have been in serious trouble. But as it is, it's fine. Meanwhile, Orange fired on, still not really able to affect too much of an advance. Again, mostly because of the Blackback Berserkers that Froggy committed over here. You know, my units throughout the entire battle are more of an irritant than anything else. The genuine killing power comes from the other players. See, there are still 13 Blackback Berserkers doing some work on these Sword Masters, and I did actually bring over another unit of Snaga Archers that I had in the settlement over here to try and just put some pressure on Firedon's army. You can see Firedon's army is not actually that big anymore. You can see he's got some Earls, yeah, he's got, you know, a fair complement of Dalian Spearmen, but it's the Royal Guard and the Dragon Slayers that concern us, as well as the Paladins, because the skirmish advantage in the late game can be a truly scary thing, especially when you're up against Dale. Dale's skirmish line is very powerful. You could say it's their one genuine strength in the current patch, but then Creed proved otherwise in the tournament, so you can see here that again, the front line is immovable, but you can see that the Witcher's causing a lot of damage there already. Goddess Nimhain sending his Witchers over here to do more dwarf burning, and that's, oof, that's brutality. I'm also throwing in much less effective, but still Snaga skirmish fire in there, just to try and get as many kills on those walls as we can. So we have stonewalled his attack, at least for the time being. You can see that over here. The Snaga Archers are routing because I sent them into melee. I tried to sort of save my Snaga Skirmishes. You see my Snaga Skirmishes are just sort of waiting over here. But yeah, all of these units are now basically free to join the main assault, which is bad for us because the Dwarven Noblemen and the Mithril Guard will give some real meat to the bones of this attack down here. But I have at least managed to stall them for the time being, allowing for Outfit's men to get more effective work done than otherwise they would have. All of those Guardians of Khan Doom proving very effective. These Khazad Orc Hunters managing to sneak their way in behind our lines with their dual axes. I do like the Khazad sort of look, and of course, if you weren't aware, Khazad Doom will be their own faction in the next patch, so any Khazad units that the Dwarves currently have will be moved over to Khazad Doom, which is neat. Got some Goblin Infantry over here, got some Snaga Skirmishers, and in fact I do believe that Bobo is going to target my Snaga Skirmishers with these Khazad Orc Hunters. It's a very good choice, because the Snaga Skirmishers have been a real irritant for the attackers in this battle, and if they can get rid of really my last truly healthy unit of Snaga Skirmishers, then they'll be in a pretty good place. Less javelins to deal with on the attack means more expertise for the dwarfs in melee, or dwarves I should say. Dwarfs is Warhammer. You can see these Guardians of Khan Doom are coming to the rescue. Meanwhile, these Snaga Skirmishes, I didn't actually notice this in the battle, much to my own dismay. You can see that I immediately am going to try and retreat these Snaga, but in the end, these Guardians of Khan Doom, interestingly enough, these guards of Khazad Doom, Khazad Orc Hunters, just sort of really burrowing into my Snaga formation. But I am going to retreat these Snaga because they don't stand a chance against dwarfs in melee. Dwarves. Right terminology. People will hate me for that. So I've got my Snaga Skirmishers right in the distance over there. All of my units are pretty much exhausted at this point, but then I don't have a lot of units left, so that's fine. And meanwhile, we can see over here that another front line, another serious front line has opened up between Master Blaster and Bobo. And once again, Goddess Nimhain is going to be forming up the first line of defence, but also Froggy is sending forward a couple of units of Blackwatch Legion to help out. These Blackwatch Legion will need to be backed up pretty quickly, because of course there are a lot of armor-piercing units in here. I mean, the Dalian, even, you know, most of the Dalian units in melee, to be honest, are armor-piercing. We've also got these Hammers of Gundabad, the Dalian Paladins. So the Guardians of Khan Doom are going to be coming forward as well. What we could really do with at this point is some skirmish fire over here, but we're really running out of skirmish options, which is bad for us. Froggy's got his Orc Bodyguard over here. We have actually, technically speaking, one over here. So Fitz is actually sending most of his army around. You can see that these Goblin Trackers have been sent forward to their deaths again. Lake Town Infantry fighting. So Fitz is actually going to try and flank around and deal with Bobo and Master Blaster's assault, because again, two players are attacking on this front, so we will need quite a lot of manpower to stop them. We've also got the Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin being backed up by some Dwarven Noblemen, so Bobo's elite forces are still very much intact, and this is going to be a real problem for us, because Orc Halberdiers are not going to be able to defeat Dragon Slayers. We've got some heavy Goblin Halberds as well, heavy Goblin Crossbowmen still trying to fire, some Warg Skirmishers which are battered but still alive, but most of our elites are now within the settlement, so this is the hill we intend to die on. The balance of forces is evenly matched. We've got some Gundabad Guard coming in to try and help with the defence. Meanwhile, if we look back over here, we can see that Firedon is also readying his assault. We can see these Dalian marksmen are ready. His army is not going to be quite as substantial as the other twos, in terms of infantry forces anyway. He's got a lot of skirmishers, but even so, he could be very dangerous. He could skirmish us down from a position of superiority simply because we don't have the capacity to go toe-to-toe with Dale in a skirmish fight. We wouldn't have had even at the start of the battle, let alone at this late stage. We can actually see at this point, I didn't actually know, well, none of us knew that this hill could be used to put men on, so I've actually put my Snaga skirmishers up there, and I'm going to toss the javelins down into this nice blob of dwarves. How many kills I get is going to be kind of variable, but you can see that this line is actually starting to break, so Alisand's elites are going to be doing a lot of damage to us. I've got my blackbacks in melee now. What have we got over here? The Snagas holding their torches. Also see the shields of the Guardians of Khan Doom moving forwards. So we'll get a nice shot of the Snaga throwing their javelins into that dwarven blob. In they go, and again, once again, I'm trying to target a unit that they can actually kill, so I'm actually going for the Ironfoot Warriors and doing a decent amount of damage to them. Because we do need to genuinely cut down on the amount of dwarves we're having to fight. You can see that there's one Rudal Berserker that's running for the hills over there. My Blackback Berserkers as well. An attrition-y fight like this is honestly not their favourite place to be. But I had to send forward at least one unit because we were genuinely struggling here on this front line. I've also got more Snaga skirmishers coming forward, getting ready to put them up on the hill as well to try and throw those javelins down. Well, let's have a look over here, shall we? Once again, the frame rate drops whenever I go near a nice juicy frontline engagement. You can actually see that these Rivermen in the front line, of course, they don't stand a chance, but they're offering some meat to the bones of this attack. But over here, things are not looking too bad for us. For the time being, the Blackwatch Legion, the Orc Bodyguards, and the Guardians of Khan Doom, supported by Rudauer Axemen and Good Bad Guard. Rudauer Axemen are actually a unit that aren't in the game anymore, amusingly enough. They are a unit from Vanilla, and I think some of the older patches of Reforged that haven't survived till now, they're essentially a reskin of the Pelagia Marines. They're a sort of low-tier melee infantry, javelin hybrid. It'll be interesting to see if they make a return when Rudauer come out. I remember in Vanilla they were basically the one saving grace of the Gundabad roster. It shows how bad Vanilla Gundabad were when a reskinned Pelagia Marine was like their best unit. Other than the Snow Trolls, of course. The Hammers of Gundabad still fighting valiantly on the front line, as well as the Dalian Paladins. The Dalian Paladins, there's a lot of armoured targets for them to go after here. It just matters as to whether or not they have the amount of men in the unit, the manpower to really stick in this fight. You can see that reinforcements are coming forward, more Ironfoot Warriors. There's a couple of Rivermen back here as well. How are things going on the outside of the walls over here though? You can see that these Orc Halberdiers defeat seems certain. They're no match for Avari Elder Pikemen in melee. And you see that Bobo's flanking force. Bobo's army has been very, very efficient when it's got into melee. Really the only speed bump that he's had so far are the Witchers firing down on that unit of Khazad warriors, and of course the Warg Skirmishes making his advance a little sticky. But other than that, his infantry has far outperformed ours in melee, as you would expect from the Dwarves, of course. These Dragon Slayers' victory seems certain, despite the fact their unit is scattered all over the place. They are only fighting lower tier Halberdiers, so they are able to get a lot of their damage done. Let's have a look at Firedon's advance as well. You can see that Firedon, he's sort of sat up on this hill over here. He's firing into the settlement. Got these Snaga archers ready. He's actually firing at my Snaga archers. So will they respond in kind? They're tired. They've already fired down on the Dalian position once. As a matter of fact, I do think that these guys are out of ammunition already, so I'm just sort of putting them into loose, hoping that the Dalian skirmish line wastes some of their ammo, because we really need them to. A lot of these burning arrows. Fire arrows in a sort of dimly lit, snowy atmosphere like this. It's almost festive, and it is Christmas time after all. Meanwhile, if we look over here, you can see my Snaga skirmishers still firing. That's actually the second unit. The other unit I've charged down the hill into the side of the Orc position, the Dwarf position. Of course, they don't stand much of a chance in melee, but even so. Okay, let's see if I can't get a screenshot without it crashing. Oh my, it worked. How about that? Everyone always likes a good pike line battle for a screenshot thumbnail. We've also got these heavy goblin crossbows. They don't have the best angle to fire unless they're going after the dwarven crossbows, which wouldn't be a bad target. It wouldn't be a bad target for my Snaga skirmishers either, to be honest, but at this point we really need to do some damage to this infantry, because Alisand's army, despite being involved in easily the most grindy part of the map, they're really starting to pay some dividends for themselves, of course. The dwarves are really at home in a choke point like this, regardless of whether they're on the attack or the defence. I'm also sending forward my second unit of blackback, so this is... I only had 3 elite infantry units, which, considering Goddess Nimhine had like 10, I think, because he was really the centre of our army. Sending forward my other unit of blackbacks to really try and keep Alasan's army intact, well, in check. We really need to deal with Alasan's army first, I think, because we're not going to be able to deal with Fayadon's army. His skirmish line is simply too great. And also over here we have another problem entirely. The combined forces of Dale and the dwarves, under the command of Bobo and Master Blaster. The Rivermen, just 12 of them firing in. There's a unit of Gundabad Guard coming in as well from Fitz. We've also got some Gundabad Guard sort of flanking around, sort of trying to make it more difficult for these guys to sort of reinforce. Erebor Infantry are going to be another brutally effective unit against Gundabad and the Misty Mountains. Very nice unit to use indeed in this matchup. The Gundabad Guard, though, able to sneak through the line, disrupt the attacking formation. And over here on the very front line, Dale and the dwarves are starting to run out of steam a little bit. These Rudar Axemen throwing their jabbies, some Witch Realm Scourge Raiders coming in as well. Not being checked by skirmish fire means they're going to be doing a decent amount of damage. And in the background over there, some Numenorian Shadow Guard. Traditionally, archers don't do a lot of damage against the dwarves unless you're talking about AP arrows, of course, but the Numenorian Shadow Guard, the range pressure is still going to be very welcome, particularly on those crossbows, because the crossbows are going to do a lot of damage. Meanwhile, Bobo, he's moving forth. He's moving forward his Dwarven Noblemen, his Ironfoot Warriors. What's left of his Dragon Slayers, most of his army is tired at this point. We've got some Goblin Trackers. There really isn't anything left of our resistance over here. And this hilltop over here is honestly where we've taken some pretty substantial losses. And as the defenders, you often can't afford losses of this magnitude. But we shall see. The Heavy Goblin Halberdiers are still here. They're not going to be able to do too much other than occupy a unit momentarily. Again, I think that's just because I moved my Orc Bodyguard out of the city centre. They were the only unit that were back there for the time being. We've also got these catapults back here. Heavy Goblin Crossbowman firing into that formation down there. Heavy Goblin Crossbows not to be sneezed at. They're a very effective unit in the right hands. Crossbows in general are a very effective unit in the current patch. Meanwhile, if we look over here, these Snaga Archers are out of ammunition. They just ran out of ammunition, I believe. And so I'm now just retreating them before they get butchered by Dalian Marksmen. So I'm going to retreat them back behind the Witch Realm Pikemen and then commit them as needed when we need a bit of mass to our line. Because Orange Fayadon is now attacking the western entrance. So the east, the west and the south are under a lot of pressure. We still do have some sort of reinforcements waiting in the northern passage. So we've got some Witch Realm Blackguard, some Hammer Guard, so some very elite forces from Fitz indeed sort of waiting. So we still do have a chance here. And indeed the balance of power is dead even, despite the fact that we've lost more. We still have some very nice elite forces. Key to this though is going to be victory over here, because we've committed a lot of resources to trying to destroy Alasan's army, and it was looking pretty dicey for a while, honestly. But now we're starting to do some genuine damage, because he was starting to sort of use his mash to push through and shield bash his way through, which of course is what the dwarves are good at, which is why I had to send forward my Orc Bodyguards to shore up this line. And it has finally looked like his advance has kind of stopped. It's still going to be very close, and honestly I don't think we traded efficiently enough over here to justify throwing this many resources at it. But even so, I mean, Outfit's army was... he had his hands tied. I mean, he had to hold every entrance based on how the map goes. Froggy, myself and Fitz had to reinforce him where needed. You can actually see the dwarves are actually going to try and push through again. At this point I think he did push too much, because at this point he's just trying to sort of burrow into the Orc Bodyguards. The Mithril Guard, they don't have the numbers left to sustain the kind of damage you take when you try and push through with your mass. Because your units do take damage. They can do it for a little bit, but you can't do it continuously over a long period of time. Shadow Guard that are out of ammunition over here. We go back over here to the frame rate killer. You can see these Orc Bodyguards, these Rudar Axeman. Over here again, it's looking very even over on this front as well. So in the south and in the east, even fights all round. But where we will struggle, I think, is up against Fayadon. You can see the big stream of red that's on the mini-map. And a lot of that can be attributed to his skirmish line as well. You can see that he's actually managed to flank around these Witch Realm Pikemen and Guardians of Khandu. My Snaga Archers, unfortunately, in melee are not going to be able to save the day. But fortunately, what can save the day is Witch Realm Hammer Guard. They're going to pulverise these Dalian Marksmen in melee. And indeed, the Dalian marksmen, sensing their imminent doom, are trying to force their way through the Snaga to escape. And this means the Snaga are going to be able to shank them as they get through. There are some Rivermen over here, though, firing their jabbies into the Witch Realm Hammer Guard. And while the Snaga Skirmishers are a nice, cheap and effective skirmish unit, which I've seen, you know, they were my MVPs in this map. So if Cannon Fodder has watched this replay, I'm sure he'll be delighted. But in my opinion, the best low-tier Javelin unit in this patch is definitely the Rivermen. The Rivermen offer such a nice addition for Dale. It really complements their long-range skirmishers really very well. And it allows their very survivable infantry to do a very good job as well. Obviously, all Javelins are going to have a weakness to arrows, mostly. The Witch Realm Hammer Guard fighting off against this horde of Dalian Spearmen. There's a lot of arrow fire coming in as well from Numenor and Shadow Guard of Fitz. And you can see that up here, trying to flank around, so all of these sort of verges you can cross. So it's not really a stone wall as such. Well, I guess it's similar to a settlement wall. And you can see here that the Dalian marksmen, not going to be a match for the Witch Realm Scourge Raiders in melee. The Scourge Raiders are very effective, of course. The Dalian marksmen, the way you kill the Scourge Raiders would be at range, of course. Scourge Raiders not good under arrow fire. You can see that the dwarves over here have really managed to sort of burrow into the lines, but at this point they are running out of steam. And despite the fact that my Orc bodyguard has taken a bit of a battering, they were at 253 at the start of the battle, I think. So taking a lot of damage, taking on the Mithril Guard and the Erebor infantry, but they are ultimately going to be successful. The support from my Snaga skirmishers is absolutely invaluable. So it does look like over here, at the very least, albeit
only half the enemy force remains,
very marginally, we're going to win in the south. But again, my Orc bodyguard are going to be the only unit that I really have of any genuine substance that survives. So it remains to be seen whether it's going to be a true victory or not. We can see that these Dalian marksmen, again, over here it's starting to look pretty dicey for us. We're really sort of running low on men in several sections of the battlefield. You can see that these Orc bodyguards' defeat seems certain. They're trying to hold the line as best they can. But again, we've got Sons of the Fallen in there. We've got Dwarven Noblemen, we've got Erebor infantry. Bobo's armor-piercing contingent is just going to be too much for our defence in the east. So it looks like we're going to win in the south and lose in the east. And honestly, with the amount of men that Fire Don has left, it looks like we're going to lose in the west as well. Which does, of course, mean that eventually we're going to have to start thinking about falling back to the town centre. But that brings forth the conundrum of how to deal with Dale's skirmish line. You can see that these Witch Realm Hammer Guard coming to the aid of the Witch Realm Scourge Raiders. You can see that if we scoot along this sort of natural wall formation over here, we can see that Fire Don has got his Dalian Paladins lurking with intent. Dalian Paladins is such a cool looking unit. The maces might be a little bit overkill, but I really love their armour. It's a cross between sort of Roman legions and Knights of the Realm. You can see these Royal Guard are ready. They are actually reloading, so they do have their ammunition. They're firing at something, and indeed actually Fitz cunningly has sort of saved up some of his units and is flanking around. Admittedly, they are only Orc Halberdiers, but at this point, just the fact that he's wasting the ammunition of some of these Dale Dragonslayers and these Royal Guardsmen is worth it, to be honest with you. The Dale Dragonslayers do not have a lot of ammunition available to them, and if we sort of manage to whittle Dale down to only having one skirmish unit in the late game, we might be able to post up in the city centre, village centre, and try and sort of grind out a win. There goes a Dwarven General. Of course, at the hands of my Orc bodyguard, Alisand's General has fallen. These Orc fodder, they are fodder in this situation, but the Orc Halberdiers going up against a unit of Dalian Paladins and Dale Dragonslayers, they are not going to stand much of a chance, but this is still a cunning little, it's a nice little surround here on Dale. They are now trapped in this pass to an extent. They will manage to kill these Halberdiers pretty quickly, but again, it's all about trying to separate out the good guys' elite forces. You can actually see that is Froggy's General at the hands of the Dwarven Nobleman, so we are starting to see the deaths of more and more generals at this point in the battle. Dalian Paladins. The Ballista is still throwing up as well. We missed the Ballista in the army compositions, but yes, Dale does have a Ballista, but he's not really going to be able to angle the shots into the town centre if we're able to deal with the Dalian skirmishers. And then we can just sort of let them come to us, which we will need. And if that does transpire, we should win. Because the Blackguard with their AP and their very high damage, and then with whatever scraps we can scrounge up from everywhere else, because Fitz has got 2 units of Witch Realm Blackguard, and then with whatever else we can support them with, they should be enough to hold the town centre, because no one else's army has got any sort of fully healthy elite units left, I don't think, not even Bobos, or even orange fire-dons now with those Dalian Paladins engaged with Orc Halberdiers. Admittedly, that sort of damage is going to be very minimal indeed. You can see these Orc crossbowmen, Ironfoot crossbowmen. I'm going loopy. You can see that the Dragon Slayers, they're still alive, amazingly. There's something about these guys. I'm not sure what it is, but they're definitely a very cool unit. In fact, I think with how they're going to split the dwarves up, I think the Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin will be the most elite unit that the dwarves of Erebor have available to them. And Erebor, of course, will be the new name of the current dwarven faction, whereas Khazad-dûm, I think the guards of Khazad-dûm and the Mithril Guard will be them. I think the idea is that the dwarves of Khazad-dûm will be more elite focused, and the dwarves of Erebor will be more sort of a well-rounded army, which honestly makes sense. Meanwhile, if we look over here, Alasan's army is sort of being finished off by what's left of my Orc bodyguard and my general. These crossbowmen sort of firing at point blank, doing far more damage to my Orc bodyguard than I really liked. If this kept up, they would have actually beat my Orc bodyguard in melee, so in the end I decided to just sort of charge them forward and get right up into the faces of the Ironfoot crossbowman. I've also still got a couple of Blackback Berserkers still alive somewhere. I think I buried them in this unit over here, unless they're the banner carriers. You can see this is kind of ridiculous. My unit getting caught on basically the first crossbowman, and that means the rest of them could still fire. But now I'm just going to do this, push forward and engage them all in melee all at once, and Ironfoot crossbows don't stand a chance against Orc bodyguards in melee. No matter how much they try and fire their bolts at point blank, they are doomed. So finally, Alasan's army, but not without one hell of a fight, has finally given up the ghost. But we can see over here that Firedon, actually no, that's not Firedon, this is the Witchround Blackguard. The Witchround Blackguard of Fitz falling back to the town centre. So we're going to sort of begin our staggered retreat. Actually see over here that I've sent forward a couple of Snaga skirmishes to just sort of try and cover the retreat of these Witchround Blackguard. But you know, this front line over here, it's still not impossible that we could get some decent kills going on here. The Witchround Hammerguard going up against well, not the Dalian Paladins, they're sort of going past, but we can see the meeting of the two units that have the most oversized blunt weapons in the game. And indeed over here we have a much more pure example of this. Up on the hilltop, the battle between the Dalian Paladins and the Witchround Hammerguard. I think I'm also throwing my Snaga Skirmisher javelins into these Dalian Paladins. I think 1-to-1, if both units were fully healthy and charged into each other, the Hammerguard would win, simply because of the higher charge, and I think they also have a higher base attack as well. Oof. But here we can see that the ballista fire is going to be brutal. What's going on over here? You can see that the Orc Halberdiers, they lasted quite a long time considering they were up against Dragon Slayers. See these Royal Guardsmen coming forward. The Hammer Guard are really doing their best to try and push their way through to get to those skirmishers. And in the end they will probably overextend themselves, and the Royal Guard of course are no slouches in melee. And ultimately when the Dragon Slayers join the fray as well, these Witchround Hammer Guard, they are tired of course. The Royal Guard are fresh. Fatigue is a factor, and of course these Dalian Paladins are quickly going to mop up these pikes. You can also see that these Dwarven Nobleman Bobo is about to sort of recharge the efforts of Fitz to try and do as much damage to Firedon's army as possible. Bobo and Firedon are really the only ones with much forces left. At this point Master Blaster's army I believe had like a couple of very, very depleted units that were basically following Bobo's army around. On the flip side of this of course, it's basically myself along with, well, myself and Goddess Nimhine have got very, very depleted elements of our army, and Fitz is the only one with any genuine substance to his defensive armies left, so it's still very, very close of course. The balance of power dead even, there's only 2% in it, and we are now into the final 10,000 frames. I loved being a part of this battle, I've got to be honest, it was really, really fun. And here we can see the Royal Guardsmen. Royal Guard are not AP in melee, I don't believe. So they are taking damage from these Witchround Hammerguard, which is what we need. We need these Dalian units to not have the skirmish advantage, and we are actually firing into them with some sort of arrow. No, it's the crossbows. The crossbows are actually getting friendly fire as much as they're getting hits on the enemy. These Dale Dragon Slayers are also firing, going to be doing huge damage to those Witchround Hammerguard. And again, it's going to be using up what little ammunition they do have with their anime powers. you can see the Royal Guard, they're going to sort of finish up these Witch Realm Hammers, and then that's going to be that. Let's go and have a look around the battlefield to see what's going on over here. So you can see that we are in the middle of a retreat. We're going to be trying to sort of set up a defence, either on the road leading to the town centre or in the town centre itself. It really does. We'll see. Fitz has got these 2 units of Blackguard, which we're really pinning all our hopes on, because in melee, if it comes down to a pure melee fight, these guys would be able to carry the day. They are so strong. Got 5 Rudara Axemen. And in addition to that, we do have... where are they? We've got some Numenorian Shadow Guards, 69 men. 50 units of crossbows that are out of ammunition. We can actually see down here that what's left of Master Blaster's army, along with some of Bobo's forces, I think, are going to be sort of mounting a bit of a premature attack on the forces. You can see 2 of my Blackback Berserkers that survive. I've also got that unit of 91 Orc Bodyguards that are still alive. But yeah, Master Blaster has attacked. And so at this point we really need to sort of start dealing with these dregs pretty quickly before the main force of Bobo and Firedon arrives. Because if they arrive when our defences are not set up properly, they're just going to blast right through us, and then that will be GG. The question is, can we hold? See these Sons of the Fallen and Erebor infantry. It's going to be difficult to deal with these elites, even with the Blackguard, simply because of the skirmish fire that's going to be coming our way. Firedon's skirmish line is still strong, the Royal Guard is still going to have ammunition, and those arrows are AP. Also see these Orc Bodyguards. So what we're going to do, myself and Fitz, are going to send forward my Orc Bodyguards and 1 unit of the Witch Realm Blackguard, just to try and overwhelm and destroy what's left of Master Blaster's army. And also what few forces Bobo has sent over here. The Dwarven Noblemen are really the main unit that he has left. Firedon is the one with the true army still remaining. But we shall see if he has what it takes to sort of push all the way to the town centre. See that we're going very wide. We're going to hit these guys in the back. Numenorian Shadow Guard taking the attack from the front. The Dalesmen are routing. I'm amazed there's still Dalesmen in the fight, to be honest with you, considering the savaging they took at the hands of those Witch Realm Inquisitors early on. And these Witch Realm Blackguard. The Blackguard is such an effective unit. They might not be as good as the Temple Inquisitors from Mordor, but they're pretty damn close, and as if Gundabad need to be stronger anyway. They are the pride and joy of Gundabad's very, very strong infantry force, because Gundabad will be toned down a little bit in the next patch. But the Blackguard will remain, and I'm sure they will remain as Gundabad's most elite unit. Because the Hammer Guard are all well and good, but they don't have the staying power in an elongated fight. They're much more designed to do their damage quickly, whereas the Blackguard are an all-rounder. You can see that we're very quickly scything our way through the Blackguard, proving that they are far superior to the Ironfoot Warriors. You can actually see that Froggy set up some of his crossbowmen on this ridge over here. Sort of a little pathway. And again, big credit to him, because this map was so fun to play. And I look forward to seeing more maps like this, because it does seem like more people are sort of really getting involved with making these maps, and it really does help the game, I think. And with the new patch right around the corner, Reforged is going to enjoy a bit of a renaissance indeed, I think. You can see that over here, though, Firedon's army has arrived. Unfortunately for us, he's sort of turning this corner with Bobo's units in tow. Bobo's also got these crossbows, which still have ammunition as well, which is another real problem for us. You can see that these Dwarven Noblemen are coming forward. The Ballista. So yeah, here come the Dalian Paladins as well. And the Dalian Paladins, they're going to be tough to take on in melee for my Orc Bodyguards, but the Blackguard would be able to beat them. Those heavy Goblin crossbows going after the Royal Guard, doing a decent amount of damage to them at that, but there's really not enough of them left to have a huge impact. And of course they probably have lower amounts of ammunition than the attackers have at this point. So my Orc Bodyguards have taken a few more losses, but ultimately we have sort of diffused this little probing assault from Master Blaster, and that basically puts him out of the game. But at this point myself and Fitz are just going to try and fall back, but in the end, while we do sort of go backwards and forwards, I did kind of decide that we should probably attack, simply because we would have just been skirmished to death. Like, those Royal Guard would have taken too much of a heavy toll on the Witch Realm Blackguard, so we really needed to be aggressive. It was really our only option. So despite the fact that we do a little bit of moving around, ultimately we do decide that going forward and attacking is the right thing to do. And we do still have this fully healthy unit of Witch Realm Blackguard back here. We have this unit of Numenorian Shadow Guard over here, this very healthy unit, well, 100 strong unit of Witch Realm Blackguard over here. and then my 80 Orc Bodyguard. Most of their hit points are probably expended at this point though, so really I'm just sort of trying to act as a foil for Fitz's army to try and finish the Dalian and Dwarven alliance, but it is going to be difficult. Dwarven Noblemen, Dalian Paladins, Dale Dragonslayers, Royal Guard. Balance of power slightly shifting against us. We can see it's still very, very close, within 1%. As we come into this, the final phase, the Royal Guard are reloading, and this is really the problem we have. We don't have any answer to the skirmish at this point. We had to use up all our skirmishes to keep them at arm's length for this length of time, and Firedon and Bobo still have skirmish forces, and that does mean, of course, that they force us to come forward in effect. And I would rather die in glorious melee than have to suffer being shot down by AP arrows. And I'm sure you all know my opinion on such things. With the Dale Dragonslayers I do understand it though, at least. With their big... I mean, their swords are so, like... It does look like one of the giant oversized greatswords from Dark Souls. Or Guts' Buster Sword. Meanwhile, these heavy goblin crossbowmen just sort of forming up a makeshift front line at this point. You see that there's still some Numenorian Shadow Guard up here. And there they are. They're not retreating. They're standing in the face of these Ironfoot pikemen that come for them. See, these crossbows are also here. So Froggy still has his crossbows. I still have my Orc Bodyguard. I think I also still have some Snaga Skirmishes, which are our only ranged option over here. So we have 28 of them, but they're just going to get shot into oblivion as soon as they come forward. But yeah, at this point, this is where I decide I'm not going to sit here and allow myself to be shot to death. I'm going to charge forward and have my units die in melee. So the Heavy Goblin Crossbowman and the Orc Bodyguard is going to lead the way, hopefully sort of take most of the shock damage, and hopefully the Witch Realm Blackguard will be able to carry the day in melee. And in a pure melee fight with what's left from the attackers, I would back them to do that just. The Royal Guard, the Dragon Slayers, the Paladins and the Noblemen all have hit points. But a lot of these units, like the Noblemen in particular, have already taken a good amount of damage throughout the battle. I'm also trying to throw my Javelins from my MVPs, my Snaga Skirmishers. Go on, Snaga. There they go. Throwing them into the Dwarven Noblemen. Hoping to get a lucky hit on Bobo's General and finishing off Dane Mark II. Or has his General already died? No, that was Alisand's, wasn't it? Where is Dane, I wonder? And surely he's in this Nobleman unit, unless he did die and I'm just going senile. I mean, you'd think I could see him, right? I mean, he's got pink armour. No matter. Maybe he did die. Or maybe he's not in that unit. But you can see that the real problem we have here is the Witch Realm Blackguard are being accosted by these Ironfoot crossbows. We still have this ballista to deal with as well. There's 4 dismounted Earls back there. And yeah, this is the problem we have. Also, my Orc Bodyguards, while they are a good unit, they don't stand a chance against a genuinely strong armour-piercing unit in melee like the Dwarven Noblemen and, of course, the Dalian Paladins. And that is my General. So rip me. My Goblins fought valiantly, considering I had what was certainly the worst army in terms of like overall stats. I'm sure if you added up all of the like attack, defense and charge values of all the armies, mine would be significantly lower than everyone else's. But then my job was to simply be annoying, and I think that I succeeded in that at the very least. See, these Witch Realm Blackguard defeat is a certainty simply because of the skirmish fire that they are taking. The Dwarven Noblemen pinning them in melee, the Dale Dragonslayers and the Royal Guard shooting them from afar, and this unit of Witch Realm Blackguard trying to sort of get to them in melee. The hill where once my Snaga Skirmishers made Alisand's life hell, Firedon is now doing the same to us.
Our men have taken control of the city.
Fitz's Blackguard fighting up a very severe hill, but they should be able to win this fight, honestly, and King Brand Mark II is right on that front line. The Royal Guard are not AP in melee, I don't think. I could be wrong about that, to be fair. Victory seems certain for them. But yeah, the Witch Realm Blackguard are going to win this fight in melee, but the Dale Dragonslayers still have ammunition. They will also be able to join the fray pretty soon. But over here is where we have a bit more of a problem. You can see that these Witch Realm Blackguard Victory does seem certain now, so you can see that when it's just a pure melee fight, they're really starting to sort of do damage. The Witch-Round Blackguard would lose, I think, to stuff like the Mithril Guard and the Dragon Slayers, but the Dwarven Noblemen have seen battle, whereas the Witch-Round Blackguard have not. They were fresh at the start of this battle, so that is why they have done quite well for themselves. Meanwhile, if we look over here, we can see that my Snaga are going to be engaging these 3 Dragon Slayers from Master Blaster that still live. The Snaga skirmishers that routed back to the town centre. And that's the Snaga managing to shank one of the Dragon Slayers. He can slay a dragon, but he can't slay a Snaga. So yeah, my Snaga are just going to be doing their best against those Dragon Slayers over there. You can see these Froggies, Heavy Goblin Crossmen trying to deal with these Paladins. So Master Blaster still being a bit of a thorn in our side here in the late game, but now we can see the Ironfoot crossbows shooting square into the back of these Witch-Round Blackguard. And this is ultimately the final nail in the coffin. Like, if this was just a melee fight, we would win, but it is not a melee fight, unfortunately. We have a significant skirmish disadvantage. These Witch-Round Blackguard, honestly, are doing a decent job against these noblemen, but the noblemen have got support now from the Daelian Paladins. My Orc bodyguard have been completely destroyed. It was really a fight that was beyond them. They'd already fought against the dwarves in a very grinding frontline battle. They had stood before the Mithril Guard and were not found wanting. But now, this was a bridge too far, and they were unable to support the Witch-Round Blackguard in perhaps the way that I would have liked, but still. These Ironfoot crossbows, they're very tired. Everyone on the battlefield is exhausted or tired or very tired. These Dragon Slayers, I think at this point, are out of ammunition. Actually, no, they're not. They still have their bows out. It's just that some of the Blackguard have managed to sneak their way through the lines. But victory is a distinct possibility. You can see these Royal Guard have taken a lot of losses in melee at this point. The Blackguard are trying to force their way through. This is a good idea because it will at least force some friendly fire from those crossbow bolts, but at this point things are looking pretty bleak. You can see the balance of power has turned against us, so it was actually in favour of us at one point. But now, you can see that 100% of our army has apparently been destroyed. So how about that? Meanwhile, back here, you can see that these Snaga, they were victorious against the Dragon Slayers. What heroes, and now they're doing the same to Daelian Paladins. Facing off against the most elite men that Dale can offer. A bunch of shaken, exhausted, battle-weary Snaga, able to defeat Dragon Slayers and Paladins, the finest from the Rovanian. And there goes King Brand Mark II. So Phaedon's army, Phaedon's general, or Phaedon's general, I think, also falls. Where is Dane? This is going to pester me forever. There he is. So Bobo's general is still intact. He's the only one with the general still intact. Everyone else's has fallen, I believe. Unless, oh no, Fitz's general is still alive. How about that? Here he is, the very weirdly textured Azog. Oh dear. There goes the ballista. Yeah. It's going to be sort of a bold last stand on this hill from the Blackguard, but ultimately they don't really stand too much of a chance under crossbow fire, and they're also in melee with some very nice troops as well. The Dragon Slayers and the Dwarven Noblemen, no pushovers in melee, and this will be enough to finish off the Witch-Round Blackguard, and also just turn the battle well and truly against us. You can see that Dane and Azog here in the same shot. If I try and get my words out, I swear, man, I'm going crazy. I'm forgetting how to speak. Well, we can see over here the Blackguard being taken out. Azog, he's seen better days. I think he will be getting a unit update as well, or at least the Gundabad General will be getting. There'll be a new look for the Gundabad General in the next patch. There's a lot of sort of updated unit models, and there he goes. Dale and the Dwarves proving their alliance stands strong in the face of all, and unbelievably, the last troops we have that are alive are a unit of my battered and beaten Snaga, and as you can tell, they've actually managed to kill one of these Daelian Paladins in the town centre, which is unbelievable. It's probably because they can't actually break these Snaga skirmishers, because they're in the town centre, so they have unlimited morale. But yes, this is where the battle will end. We're into the final 500 frames, essentially. So this will be where this fight ends. So yes, we have lost, but it was a really fun one, this was. big thanks to Froggy for both making the map and allowing me to be a part of it. Here comes Mal's. It's now 4v4. Oh no, my Snaga, they're wavering, but they can't break because they're in the town centre. There's nowhere left to run. And I don't think I actually will be able to kill any more of these, but the fact that they killed 3 Dragon Slayers and a Paladin, a unit of 7 exhausted Snaga, MVPs right here. The best there ever was. All Snaga can aspire to be like these guys. They held, and they didn't back down. There he goes. So yeah, that is it. As we look out across the field, sort of death and carnage on everywhere you look from the summit. But yes, Dale and the dwarves reclaim this settlement here, presumably at the base of the Misty Mountains. And let's have a look at the battle statistics. So this is not my army. Actually, we can see all of the armies of the defenders. So we can see that this is Froggy's army. If we look actually at the total kills, Froggy was this army at the top, so he got the least amount of kills, amazingly. And I think that, you know, Outfit or Goddess Nimhain obviously got the most of us because he had the most elite army and he had to really hold down the lines. But amazingly, I got 2,666 kills with a unit of with an army full of Snaga and Goblins, and I think that was because a lot of it had to do with several units. We'll go through my kill totals in a minute because I do remember some of them. And as you can see, very similar kills throughout all of the armies. The one with the most kills on the field was Bobo. He played very well, I have to say. I think that if we look over in the background over there, if we see the hill that I'm sort of circling around with my mouse, I think that was where we ultimately lost the battle, to be honest with you. I think that the teamwork between Master Blaster and Bobo was very well executed, and they sort of managed to blunt a lot of Froggy, well, some of Froggy and Fitz's reinforcements. And ultimately we really needed those reinforcements in the late game because we just ran out of steam, and you know, we were at the mercy of Firedon's skirmish squads. So if we have a look here at the kill totals, some pretty decent kills from Froggy with his elites, but where he really struggled, I think, was with some of his more lower tier units like the spears, and he just got overwhelmed by Dale and the dwarves, which is probably why he got a lower kill total than even me. But if we look at my army, we can see that obviously Orc Bodyguards and Blackback Berserkers getting a decent amount of kills. This second unit of Blackbacks got kind of overwhelmed by dwarves, but we can see that 206 kills on Goblin Infantry, 256 kills on Underground Goblins, 206 kills on Snaga Archers. Good kills all round from Snaga Skirmishes, except this unit, it has to be said, only 17 on that. I think that was the unit in the late game which kind of ran out of steam towards the end. Mountain Orc Berserkers 251. A lot of these lower tier units doing very well for themselves, which I was amazed at. And actually I think this is the only two we can see. So the Misty Mountains armies we can see, but for some reason not the Gundabad armies. But there you go. That was one of the most fun battles I've been a part of for quite a while, to be honest with you. But then again, I haven't been able to play as much as I would have liked to recently because of my very busy schedule. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you'll vote for this as your mod of the year for 2017. And I hope you'll join me for whatever is next, which I'm not sure what it will be, honestly. But I hope, well, I can only hope that it will be as good and fun as this one was to be in.